Let's bring in ESPN's boxing writer Dan Rayfield with the latest. Dan, what can you tell us about this development? It doesn't seem like much to stop a super fight. What do you make of all this?
Let's all calm down for a minute. I talked to Bob last night, right before I came on ESPN News to talk about it, and he was sort of saying some of the same things, not maybe as strong as he said in the interview with the Grand Rapids newspaper, but you know, I've known Bob for a long time, and I've been through negotiations covering them for big fights many times over the years. And there's lots of times where just when it looks like the fight's off or one side says, forget about it, we're done, you know, somehow the fight comes back together. Now, maybe this one will, in fact, be dead and it won't come back together, or maybe it'll get put off until sometime near the end or the later part of 2010. But I'm certainly not one to say that just because Bob, who is very emotional and has really been upset throughout this entire negotiating process, it was why he turned over the talks to the president of his company, his stepson, Todd DeBuff. I'm not necessarily thinking Bob is thinking with a straight mind at the moment, and that these things have a way of coming back together, particularly when you're talking about a fight that has the potential to generate the most money in the history of boxing for any single fight. This is the biggest fight by far, and money talks in boxing.
Dan, for those of us who weren't in on the particulars to the testing for a big-time fight like this, why would Mayweather insist on this Olympic-style testing, and why would Pacquiao have a problem with it?
Well, Manny Pacquiao, first of all, supposedly has a problem with it because, you know, he's a superstitious guy. He feels like also if they take his blood several times during the course of a training camp, that it would somehow weaken him. Now, he's not completely averse to having his blood taken. He's willing to submit to urinalysis at any time in the random testing during his pre-camp or during his training camp, as well as, you know, right before the fight and after the fight. And he's willing to submit to blood tests during the time right before the kickoff press conference, which would be in early January if they actually finalize the fight, and would certainly submit to the blood testing in the immediate aftermath of the fight that night at the venue. The Mayweather camp would like him to submit to the Olympic-style testing. And by the way, Mayweather would be subject to the same exact rules and regulations that Pacquiao would be adhering to. Floyd's father, Floyd Sr., has been accusing Manny Pacquiao of taking illegal substances for a long time now. I guess he thinks there's something unnatural about the fact that Pacquiao, who began his career as a teenager fighting as a 106-pounder, has moved up through the weight classes and won 7 different titles in 7 different divisions, which is a record in boxing, and believes that because he's been able to do that and maintain his speed and his power and knocking guys out in the heavier divisions, that something must be unnatural about it. So, you know, there's ways to look at it from both sides. Pacquiao's like, listen, I'll take the test blood beforehand, I'll take the test afterhand, but I don't want anybody pricking me with a needle during my training camp. And the way I understand the rules, it's random, so they could come at 4 o'clock in the morning and disrupt them. They could do it the day before the fight. All the sorts of things that his trainer, Freddie Roach, definitely doesn't want being done to his fighter. Dan Rayfield, give us real quick. Dan, does this fight happen? Your thoughts, real quickly. I think the fight happens.
All right, Dan Rayfield, our ESPN.com boxing writer, joining us here with the word that there's trouble with the Pacquiao-Mayweather fight, the super fight set for later in 2010.